I think a rewatch would be fun too for the first couple ones because you notice some stuff.
Yes, so here's season 1, episode 1. Oh, I can't even say this name now. Sassenach? Is that the title?
Sassenach. Yeah, it's Sassenach.
Oh, all these Scottish names are going to throw me. Okay. Episode 1, Sassenach. In 1945, Claire Randall is a former World War II combat nurse visiting Inverness, Scotland, with her husband Frank, getting to know each other again after their wartime separation. Frank is researching his family history, in particular, his 18th century ancestor, Jonathan Blackjack Randall, the morning after observing a modern Druid ritual at the Standing Stones on the hill of Craigadune. Claire touches one of the stones, wakes up lying on the ground. Soon, she is in the middle of a skirmish between the English redcoats and rebel Highlanders, and comes face to face with Frank's double, Randall, who is the captain of the Dragoons. A Scotsman rescues Claire, and she meets Jamie Fraser. As they flee, she sets his dislocated arm, and then later treats his bullet wound. Claire is brought to Castle Loch and realizes that she has somehow traveled back in time. The synopsis, according to Wikipedia, but a lot more happens.
Yes.
They are skipping a lot. Things that I observed the second time around. The first is it starts with her talking about a vase.
I love that. It's one of my favorite parts.
And I was trying to think when that takes place, because she's looking at the vase and she says, thinking about buying it and giving it a home, and then how her life would have changed if she would have bought that vase. And it's like, wait, is this taking place the morning before she goes, or the day of, or
I think it was
hard to place that.
So you don't really know. And like I've watched it again and tried to look at her coat and think about like, is that because she's not wearing that coat when she goes to the Stones and travels.
Yes, this time I was very aware of what she was wearing. I was like making notes because I was like, why is she nothing all of a sudden?
Yeah, that's one of that coat makes me think this was just maybe Frank is off doing some research somewhere and she's just going through the town. Like not everything is in a real chronological order most of the time in this show. I do love that little kind of vignette, that little moment. What might have changed, what would have been different, because it's more than just the vase. It's the idea of putting something in a place and letting it stay there. Because when you learn more about her family, you get the sense that she traveled with her uncle a lot.
Yes, I didn't realize that.
She was an army nurse. So she's never really had roots anywhere. And it's kind of this moment where she's longing or wondering what that would be like to have a home and a vase where you put flowers, and that's just something that you do. She's always like that. She's always on the move out her whole life.
I did not catch the bit about the uncle and the archaeology the first time around. And this time I was like, that's even more interesting because that hasn't come up yet. She hasn't been like, oh, I know this from archaeology school that this is how a druid thing works. But I have a feeling that might come up. I don't know. I didn't even think about this. I guess I heard it, but I wasn't acknowledging it. I thought she was a doctor. And then watching this, I like right from the first scene, somebody says, nurse, that will be enough. And she walks away and I realize, oh, she's a nurse.
I'm a nurse. Not a wet nurse.
I also wrote down a bunch of dates because I was really trying to place exactly when she went back in time. Their vacation started 6 months after VE Day.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Before that, they had been apart for 5 years, but she doesn't give a clear date on how long they've been married.
It seems like they were married a brief time and then the war separated them.
Also, the fortune teller with the tea leaves scene was very interesting on Rewatch. Because I was trying to dissect everything she says.
Yeah.
Because she does predict two husbands right off the bat, and then the interrupted timeline.
But to but they don't break. It says that one doesn't end. They continue in parallel. Did you catch that that one doesn't break?
I didn't. I thought I was trying to dig into it, but also there's just so much going in there.
That's a big like foreshadowing that these two love lines on her palm or whatever, they continue parallel and tandem in two different time streams. Dun, dun, dun.
I know Frank runs into somebody in the street.
Oh, is that when it's like kind of raining?
Yes. And I'm wondering, okay, is that another time traveler? Is that because I already, like, a few episodes in, I started going, wait, I thought, okay, there's a bunch of seasons of this. What could happen? Could there be other time travelers? Could they somehow go back, but they screw up the time? I don't know. So, and then watching that scene again, I'm like, oh, that's going to come back, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's got to be important, right? Like, it has to be important. And that's one of the things that's still a little bit mysterious, even now. And it's one of the things that I really that's the thing that I'm waiting for it to be resolved. Like, because it, he talks about seeing a Highlander in the street, and you gotta believe, because he's watching Claire in the window, you have to believe that that's Jamie.
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to believe that. You have to believe that. But how? Yeah,
because this is, if you want to meet me again, this is where I'll be or something. But no, he wouldn't live that long.
There's also some people who've read the books, or that, like, the author has said that, yes, that's Jamie, but we don't know why, and we don't know how.
Oh. So much happens before she goes back in time.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, really a lot. It was a lot of setup. I think it's necessary, though. All that setup is necessary. Otherwise, you wouldn't care about Frank.
Yeah.
And you have to care about Frank.
Yeah, here's my question about Frank. Because looking at going into the series, I was thinking, knowing the setup, I was ready for him to be a jerk and not a good husband. And I'm like, that would make sense, because then she'd get to go back and have this fling, and it would all be justified. But he's a nice guy throughout that episode.
He's great.
The only thing...
the thing is, if you have to feel some kind of tension, though. You have to feel torn as the viewer, because if you don't, it's not a very interesting story. She doesn't have an interesting conflict. So he has to be a nice guy.
Yeah, so that makes it much more human, that she's being almost forced against her will to have this affair.
Well,
it's almost...
She's not almost, like, she doesn't know, like, she doesn't know if she's ever going to get back. She doesn't know if she's forever. So, like, you may as well live your life in this, But in those first episodes, she is really focused on trying to figure out how to get home.
Yes. And the one conversation I hung my hat on a little bit on the rewatch was he asks her, he tries a roundabout way ask her if she's been unfaithful while they were apart.
Are you asking me if I've been unfaithful?
Claire.
Is that what you think of me, Frank?
And she's offended. And he's like, oh, it'll be okay. Which to me either reads as he's like being really nice, or maybe he cheated and he's just trying to be like, it would be okay with me.
That's something I never thought about it that way before. I've more thought about it like he's trying to be, so he just wants her to tell the truth. And so he's saying it's okay, but of course it's not okay. It's never okay.
No.
To, like, cheat on your husband or wife. It's never like, that's cool.
Unless you touch some stone and you go back in time and you're being chased by dragoons and there's this weird marriage law, it'll keep you out of the stockade. Yeah. It's the most convoluted.
It really is. Yeah. It's a lot. It's also interesting because I think at the beginning when she first meets Jamie and she, like, fixes his arm and all this stuff, there's obviously tension there, and that something is going to happen, but it's very like in episode. If just looking at episode 1, it's just still very implied. You know, nothing is really out there yet, and she's like angry and scared and, you know, bossing people around, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, that humor comes off.
They're completely taken aback. They're like, "Who's this woman?
Women
Why are you yelling at me?"
Women don't tell us what to do. We're men.
Yeah. So they're just like completely like, what the? They don't know what to think of her.
Yeah. That's her attitude going back in time is fascinating, and you could even see they're put off just by her accent. Just like, what are you saying?
Yeah, like
she mentions Roosevelt, and while she's cursing, which I think is like a hilarious way to curse, where you just throw in a modern person in the middle of Jesus H. Christ.
Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ.
Yeah, they got big. Oh, that's probably some god we don't know about. Some saint we haven't. Sounds like a saint. Yeah. So let's see. Okay, so we got. She went back in time. She meets the scoundrel, but first she meets the double of her husband.
Yeah.
The guy who, same actor, which
who's a phenomenal actor, by the way.
That he can pull both roles off.
Yeah.
And
you love one of them and you hate the other.
And that guy goes like from 0 to rape, like right away. Just like runs into a girl in the woods. First thing on his mind.
This is one of my criticisms, actually, of this show, is that I think a rape is really overused as a method to move the plot forward. Like,
yeah,
move the plot forward. Rape, like that's how we'll get an emotional reaction out of someone. So anyway, that's my.
Yeah, because in the rewatch I was like, he's not on screen for more than a minute, and then it's like, I guess it's a packed episode. We got to get the villain in, and then we got to introduce the dreamboat, figure out a way to get his shirt off, and then move on. Quick, we only got 15 minutes left.
It's true. Unrealistic that he's just like so purely bad.
Yes, just evil, almost for the sake of being evil.
Yeah, he's not a real nuanced guy.
And speaking of rape, because I wrote this down like 2 sentences after I wrote down meeting the double, almost getting raped. When she's brought to, I think is it McDougal? The stern face guy? Yeah. Because when she's brought into that cabin, even one of the other men mentions rape, too.
Like immediately.
Yeah, and McDougal's like...
Yes. I don't hold with rape. We have no other time for it anyway.
I'm not fond of that. Also, we don't have time. So, first, morally, that's wrong. But also, guys, we gotta get going.
Yeah, he's an interesting character too. He has a lot going in the first season, especially.
Yeah, he was another one I've said I wanted to focus on figuring out his backstory or his lineage.
Yeah, he has some really funny moments too.
Yeah, there's some humor to the show, especially and not just from Claire, but just the other people and their interactions. Okay, so she fixes his shoulder, and that's a pretty gruesome way that the shoulder was turned out. But the only thing was the only thing I wrote down was it's not black and blue at all. It's just it looks completely flesh colored.
He has to be very attractive still.
Oh yeah.
It can't be gross. It's interesting. It's like, how soon can you get the main guy, like, bare chested, so that you feel like,
we gotta see that 8-pack that we're gonna see much more later on.
Nobody else gets injured. No one else is injured in Charlotte.
No, he gets injured twice. Yeah, and that's the other thing. He gets shot. This is my problem with other historical things, is that a lot of times the main characters will get these gruesome wounds that they'll live through or even heal from very quickly.
Yeah.
So he was shot and he didn't tell anybody, and then she fixes him up and gets him back on his horse in a matter of minutes, which is unrealistic in the best scenario.
Convenient, but we just have to forgive it.
And the end of the season, the first episode is them going to the castle. They're arriving at the castle, I believe.
Yeah. They finally
castle
get
lock. Yes, they just are walking to the castle, I believe, at the end.
Yeah.
Of the first one. And then that's when she looks around and goes, "Oh, I'll never make it back on my own. Even though I just made this trip yesterday in a car, I can't make it back because I have to go. I have to have a horse."
Yeah. And how would she even know where she was going after riding at night?
Mm-hmm. Well, she has that one landmark, the one where she points out and says, "Oh, there's always an English scout there," or whatever, and that's how they know about the ambush.
Oh, right, because Frank tells her that story when they're riding in the car.
Yeah, the one other thing I'll say is I saw a theme in the rewatch was that a lot of what goes on in her life seems to be other people telling her where to go. Because in the beginning they say that Frank is taking a trip to... They're taking a holiday, but they're going on a trip that Frank wants to go on.
Right.
They're going to Scotland for his heritage. And after that, he's going to become a professor at Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately, when she goes back in time, she's taking someplace else. And she wants to go back. But she also... she's just
she doesn't have a lot of agency.
She's just constantly beholden to where all these men want to go.
Yeah.
I was wondering, does she ever get to go anywhere? Does she ever plan a trip, Frank?
Probably. Well, she decides to go join the army. Yeah.
My first impression of this episode was that I wasn't exactly hooked after the first episode of this one when I first watched it. But now on the rewatch, I see that there's so much potential in there that hasn't been paid off.
Yeah, I think I really, when I watched the first episode, I was definitely very curious about what would happen next. And I was nervous for her. I'm pretty sure I watched the first 3 episodes in one sitting because I was like, oh my gosh, what is she going to do? She's stuck, friends, no help, no real knowledge of this time either. Frank knows a lot about the time. She knows next to nothing except for what she might remember from conversations with him. So I don't know, I was very concerned for her and how she was going to get out of this mess.
Yeah. Okay, my last thing I wanted to do for the episode is I wanted to award the Great Scott Award for the greatest Scotsman of every episode. So we met a lot of Scotsmen when we went back in time. We meet McDougal, we meet Jamie. I haven't figured out anybody else's names, but I want to because they all seem interesting. And I know a couple of them stick around. But I'm going to give my Great Scott Award to the innkeeper when they check into the bed and breakfast, who kind of plays a little bit of historical knowledge with Frank. But then later when they're jumping on the bed and the chandelier's moving, she looks up and gives a little smirk. Smirk. She's like, yeah, here we go.
Good nature. So she's good. She also introduces that little bit of, she sets the tone, sets the history of Inverness too.
Thank you for watching our first episode of the Outlander Revisited series, where we rewatch, review, and discuss every episode of Outlander. If you enjoyed it and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to be a guest on an upcoming episode, please, in the comments section, tell me what your favorite episode from season 1 is, and I will direct message you to see if I can get your contact information.
That's one thing that kind of annoys me, is because at the beginning, it looks like a real dress. And then all of a sudden, it has no waist.
It looks like a nightgown.
Yeah.
That's why on rewatch I was like, okay, why was she wearing that?
Not that much happened to you. I've been out and about, and my my clothes didn't fall apart. I don't know. Like,